Good morning, ma'am.
Okay. Is my
Good
screen
morning,
visible?
ma'am.
Shall we start the class? Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have shared the PPT. Today I am not using the board. I will be using the PPT plus some links which I will be showing and explaining. So today is day 4 in the deep learning. So far what we have discussed, I will just summarize and then we will go for today's class. So from day 1 we were discussing the convolution and then its operation, what happens in a convolution. We have calculated the uh, output size of an image, given an input size and a filter size, tried, padding, etc. And then the number of parameters involved in performing the convolution operation, etc. And actually the number of parameters in a sense, how much or how many number of inputs will be given to the hidden neuron. So when you are calculating the number of parameters, it is actually sigma xi wi, where your x is from the input and w is from the filter mask. Okay, so that gets calculated, that is the convolution operation, and then when it is given to the hidden layer neuron, we will be adding the bias. Whereas when you are calculating the output image size, we simply add 1 in the formula. So that way, if you are adding if you are doing padding, then the output and the input image size will be same. If you are not doing padding, then the size will be reducing. Depending on the filter size, you may get a reduction in the image size, whether it is 1 round or 2 rounds, depending on the filter size. Okay, if it is 3 cross 3, then 1 round across the boundary pixels will be lost. If it is 5, then 2 rounds around the image size will be lost. So if you want to have same size, then you have to do 1 round of padding or 2 rounds of padding. So that depends. All that we have discussed very much in the earlier classes. So till now we have discussed that, and also we have discussed what is the feature learning part. So depending on how many levels of features that you want to extract. In the first level, it will be extracting edges and then the shapes. In the second level, it will extract much bigger features. In the third level, much more bigger features, like how humans will try to understand or try to recognize a particular person or an object or an animal. So by looking at small features, then finally we will integrate everything and then recognize a person or an animal or an object. So in the same concept, it works. Okay, so here convolution plus ReLU, then pooling, and then convolution plus ReLU pooling. So this cycle, this continues till what level of basically this convolution plus ReLU plus a pooling. This together is called as a block. I'm not going into the presentation mode as of now, because I will be switching to a link now. This link is a very good one where you have some animations also. So that's why I wanted to show this. I will explain what is ReLU and what happens in ReLU. ReLU is rectified linear unit. This is a non-linear activation function. What it does is, any input value which is negative, it will be made as 0. As you can see here, there is a negative value and that is made as 0. And any positive value will be retained as it is. Okay. So generally, when you to perform any pixel operations, usually the pixel values will be considered positive only. And because of the filter, if your filter has 1 0 minus 1, likewise in the values to perform edge detection, then you will get a negative value after convolution. So those negative values are suppressed, positive values are taken. So for that reason, we apply a ReLU. And when you have multiple zeros, then actually it actually appears like a sparse. So what we need to do is, we can actually reduce the size. When we have sparse elements, we can reduce the size instead of giving the actual suppose if it is here it is 7 cross 7, so we can reduce the size because there are many zeros and we need not have to waste the or we need not have to perform the compute which is involving the connections between the 0 and the next level. Okay, so we can reduce the computation. So what we need to do is we have to go for a pooling, which I will explain. And before that, I will show the visual representation of this RGB channels, how they are added and put in a particular element. So when you perform this filter with this image, the red of the filter will be convolved with the red elements, red pixel elements or channel of the image. Likewise green, likewise blue, you will get a value and all the three are added plus one bias, it will go here. So that way it happens. And then the pooling, so what happens in the pooling is, assume you have a pooling like this. So what happens is, max pooling, what we do is, we out of the 4 cross 4, we will take a 2 cross 2, a smaller portion, and then we will find out of these 4 what is maximum, that we will put it here. So if 0 is there, the 0 will not be taken to the next level. Okay. In case of average pooling, it is the average of these 4 elements will be going here, so that the 0 also will not be taking a significant entry into the next level. So that is how the size reduces, and this we call it as a downsampling. The 4 cross 4 becomes 2 cross 2. So a downsampling happens. So if your image is of size 512 by 512, then it reduces to 256 cross 256. In one more level, what happens? It becomes the next level. So half of 256 cross 256 will happen. Okay. So that is how it goes on. And what happens in image flattening is, what we do is, all these elements which are in multi-dimension or in the 2-dimension case, it will be flattened and it will be written in a single array or a single column vector. Okay, so that is called as flattening. What is available in the array form will be made as a single column. So it will become a single column like this. Okay, it shows 675 cross 1. That means in one column vector, you will have all the values, whatever you have done from all these previous levels of layers will be made into a single vector, column vector. So that is called flattening. And then all these elements goes to the next level. This is called as dense layer or fully connected layer. We can call it a dense layer or fully connected layer. So basically dense layer means all the elements in the flattened vector, flattened neurons will be connected to every neuron in the dense layer. That means the connections are very strong here. So it is called as a dense layer or a fully connected layer. Okay. So this hidden layer actually takes care of the determining the output. Okay. So the important decision making activation function will happen here, and then you get your output here. Okay. So suppose if you want to have 6 classes in your output or 10 classes in your output, then accordingly you can use a softmax layer. So here I would like to differentiate between the sigmoid and the softmax. In case of sigmoid, even softmax also, it will be, in case of sigmoid, what happens is the value from minus infinity to plus infinity will be squashed to 0, 1, and then any value between 0 to 1 will give a probability of the occurrence of a, or a membership of the element belonging to that particular class. In case of softmax, what happens is it is actually only between 0 to 1. What you can do is, if there are 6 classes, then what you can do is the 0 to 1 can be split into 6 partitions, and then each partition can give a class label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Suppose if you want to have 10 classes in your classification, Okay, output if you are classifying into 10 classes. Okay, say if you want to classify temperature from hot to cold or from warm to hot or whatever, then in between if there are several levels, 10 levels, then 0 1 is one level, 0.1 to 0.2, 0.2 to 0.3, 0.3 to 0.4. Likewise, you can have each will be corresponding to one particular output label. So that is what happens in the dense layer. Okay. So here there is an example given with a CIFAR data set, and if you are using Keras is a framework which I will be explaining later. If you are using CIFAR 10 dataset, then you can automatically load it. If you just give a command load dataset, and if you have the pip install Keras command, then it will automatically install Keras, and then it will, if you give load dataset, it will load into your into the library. Okay, so I will anyway share this link. You can go through this at leisure. And I have one more example, object classification with CNN using the Keras deep learning library. So here I have the link for explaining the CIFAR 10 problem. One data set is being taken, how to load the CIFAR 10 data set in Keras and how to work with it. So when I come to the framework, I will explain this link, certainly. So now I'll continue with this. After we'll go to the framework. So finally it goes to this. This is what I have explained. From the fully connected, it goes to the softmax layer, and then you get the classification done. Okay.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, let us say the input is 6 cross 6 cross 3.
Okay.
And the filter size is 3 cross 3 cross 3.
Okay.
So, so we got the output image as 4 cross 4 cross 1.
Yeah, fine.
Now it is not an RGB, no, ma'am. So for again for convolution, we need a filter like 3 cross 3 cross 3, but it is not compatible now, right? When we are doing this repeatedly, the filter size and the
what you can do is in the next level, you can go for a single filter. You need not have to use once again. See in this case, see in the first level, what you do is you use a 3 cross 3 cross 3 or 5 cross 5 cross 5 filter. In the next level, when you do, you can use a single filter. You can use a single filter in a sense, not an RGB. You can go for a grayscale filter. See,
but the result is in RGB only, no, ma'am. It is a mixture of R, G, and B.
Yeah, it is a mixture of R, G, and B, but it will have. What I mean to say is, if you use a filter of single plane instead of 3 planes, what happens is that one plane will with one plane only, the 4 cross 4 cross one plane only, right? Your filter is also of one plane, so that will convolve. Still it will have the color information. It will still convolve with that single layer of filter.
Okay, ma'am. So based on the input size, we have to change our filter size also.
Yes, exactly. Not filter size actually. Size in a sense the number of planes.
Yeah, dimension, right, ma'am.
Yeah. Correct. You're right.
Fine, ma'am.
So this is what, yeah.
Ma'am, when we do downsampling, like, aren't we losing some part of the image, like image data? Aren't we losing something which might have a effect later, or doesn't it matter at all?
Yeah, your question is very right. Actually, what happens is some information may get lost, but what we are doing is to avoid that only. What we are trying we are applying the filters in such a way that all the essential information of the image are captured in the filters. So for that reason, what we are doing is we are using multiple filters, not just one filter. If you use this in this convolution, it is not just one filter. We are using filters or 10 filters. How many filters you want, you can use here. So what we are doing is each filter tries to extract certain portion. As I said earlier, suppose in this cat image, say the ear portion will be captured by one filter, which is having a capacity, or that filter will have the coefficients which are extracting the curve regions. Okay, and also in the same level, in the same layer, same level, you will have another filter which can extract curve region. You will have another filter which can extract this region, another filter which can extract this region, another filter which can extract the body region. So you will have some 10 filters in one level which will extract small regions, so that the complete part of the object be extracted. And then finally in the next level you go for the bigger portion, say the head portion. In the first level you are extracting ear, nose, mouth, like that. In the second level you are extracting the face region, the entire body region, likewise. So that what happens, you are not missing any minute details also. So all the minute details plus major details, everything will be captured in several filters at each level, and they are contributing for the classification. We are going to see in the next slide. So the first convolution layer, it will extract features like this, the diagonal edges or the vertical edges or horizontal edges or any color region, similarly like that. And in the next level, it will be taking a much bigger region. And in the next level, it will be taking a much bigger information of the images, likewise. And finally, when you integrate, you will get all the essential informations for particular recognition. Okay, so the benefits of this operation is actually it reduces the dynamics and computation, it reduces the overfitting, because we are not giving all the information, we are giving only the significant information for performing the classification. That means the noises are removed, unwanted information are removed. You are providing only the abstraction level of data. Okay, it is tolerant towards variations and distortions. So what happens in ideally in this convolution, ReLU and pooling is it reduces the sparsity. That means the number of connections are sparse. It reduces all the connections, and it gives location invariant feature detection. That means wherever the object is placed, because of convolution which is applied over the entire image, the features are extracted, and then the parameters are shared across the next level of neurons that are connected. And ReLU introduces nonlinearity. It speeds up the training and increases the computation speed, because the zeros are removed. I mean, the negative values are removed and only positive values goes to the next level. So what happens is the dropout happens here. Okay, pooling also, it reduces the dimensions. And so what happens is when you reduce the dimension, as we have seen in the link, only the maximum value of the intensity goes to the next level. The lower the intensity, it will not go to the next level. So information which is having more weightage that are necessary for classification or pattern recognition is only moving forward. The information which are not required or which are having less contribution will not be moving to the next level. So that is what happens here. So learning workflow, the input goes from the file or database or from sensor like a camera or temperature sensor or whatever it is. And then the pre-processing. Actually, I will be explaining about this augmentation in the next slide. So what is meant by augmentation is you are trying to use the number of samples or wherever the image is kept, it is extracted by using the convolution, sliding the filter over the image. But if the image is rotated or scaled or translated, then what happens? So that part is done using the augmentation, which I will explain in the next slide. And then you are trying to import the reference models. Actually, the reference model, in a sense, suppose if you are using the VGGNet or any such standard data set, then or standard models, that you can use it, because those models are having the built-in commands or everything is upstream. Not have to worry about what is happening inside each and every layer. How you have to just it is like plug and play. You have to just give the input and then change only the last layer, the classification part, then automatically you get the output. So develop predictive models. So this part I explaining in detail. This hardware accelerated training, this part will be explained much more detailed later. This hyperparameter tuning is actually, we'll discuss what are the hyperparameters and how they can be tuned. And this network visualization we have just discussed. And integrate model with system, whether you want to desktop or you want to integrate with the cloud or with any embedded hardware, like if it is the self-driving car, then where you want to deploy, or if it is in an aircraft simulation system or in any real-time application using Raspberry Pi or any NVIDIA or Jetson board, how you want to integrate. That too will be explained in detail in the upcoming slides. So next I will explain the augmentation part, but this is the workflow. So augmentation means we are actually trying to perform operations like rotation, reflection, scaling. I think in the beginning I have explained all this. All these are called as two-dimensional transformations, or we call it as affine transformation, because they don't alter the contents, only their geometric locations are altered. Okay, so an image will be performed augmentation like this. You can translate, rotate, scale, everything. So what happens is the same image, you will have versions of it. So train, you have only 3 images like this, but then when you augment, you generate more versions of the same input images. So what happens is the training data set you increase. Though you have only 3 images, your training data set you increase, and then you perform convolution with all these augmented images. So what happens is the convolution happens with all these augmented images. So at the time of testing, even if you give your image in any orientation or any reduction in size or in any location, it will try to recognize the okay in any particular position.
Ma'am, this is in max pooling, no ma'am. Like we have seen this in max pooling itself.
No, max pooling is actually taking only the suppose if you as we have seen, if you have 4 pixels, then out of the 4 which is having max, that will be taken. Whereas in augmentation, what we are doing is, say for this this particular vehicle, we are trying to rotate, I mean shear, rotate, translate. We are trying to perform different operations, rotation, actually zoom in, zoom out, flipping, all other operations are there. So what we are doing is we to generate different versions of the same image. Okay, different versions of the same image. Say for example, if you see this hat, this is rotated 90 degrees. this is scaled, and this is upside down, and then this is zoomed version, this is again zoomed version. So what we are doing is you are trying to increase your data set size. Okay, and then what you are doing is when you're giving the test image, which is of different rotation, which is of a different portion of the image. That means even if you give partial portion of the image, say a cat, if you are not showing full body of the cat, it should still recognize. So for that reason, you are giving this augmentation. When you zoom in and then show only some portion of the train, at the time of testing, it should still try to recognize. That is the idea. That's the rationale behind this. Like this, rotation, flipping, scale, shearing, shifting, all this. Okay, so this is the small snippet. So this is called as data annotation. This plays a very important role. And then these are the hyperparameters that can be tuned. So the hyperparameters are the depth. That means how many levels and the number of layers, how many neurons in each level you have, and then solver options. That means your gradient descent or mini batch, ADAM or RMS prop, error rate, that RMS, what is that? Root mean square and cross entropy, whatever you are using for reducing the error, and then learning rate, alpha, regularization, L1 loss, L2 loss, all these parameters are called as hyperparameters. And all these hyperparameters we can tune. Okay, all these hyperparameters can be tuned. Tuned in a sense, you have to, I hope you remember the back propagation, what we have discussed in perceptron. This works like a perceptron model only. Back and forth, it goes in multiple iterations, and then all these are tuned. See, the filters, what we have seen, those are not fixed only just for one iteration. You can do multiple iterations till you are extracting, till your classification is perfect. Okay, so you can try this in several iterations, and then you can fine tune all these hyperparameters. And the techniques for tuning the hyperparameters are parameter sweep, one technique, Bayes optimization is another technique. Actually, we are not going deep into these techniques as of now. But if you have MATLAB, or you can just browse in Google MathWorks website, or you just type command Bayesian optimization. If you have installed MATLAB, or we have college, every user of our college email ID will have a MATLAB account. You can download, or you can work online also. If you just give the command deep learning using optimization, you can get the program to work. Maybe later I have MATLAB installed in my system, and also I have deep learning toolbox. So I have just put it here. Maybe if I get time, I will download the code, and then I will run it and show later on. Maybe it is not required for T2, but later on I will do it. And now moving to the third and fourth part of the deep learning workflow. Actually, we can implement this deep learning, whatever you develop the model, you can deploy it on the CPU or CPU, GPU, or multiple GPUs, or on the cloud, anywhere, whatever you want. Okay, and these code are actually relevant to MATLAB, not Python. So deploying deep learning applications. Actually, I have attended one organized by MATLAB for deep learning. So the slides that I got it from there, I'm using it here. So here you have the embedded hardware like this. You can use a Raspberry Pi or a BeagleBone or even the NVIDIA cards for Jetson Nano or anything, any such cards you can use, and with these processors for the compatibility, and then whatever you develop, this is your model, and it is generated using the program. Instead of MATLAB, you will be using Python, and then you will develop the model, and on top of it you have application logic. So whatever you develop goes to your desktop or web or cloud. So this is where you deploy it. So the multi-platform deep learning deployment, you need, if you are using NVIDIA Jetson Nano cards, then you need the CUDA libraries or certain processors for it, ARM processors at the deployment. So some models I have shown here. If you are deploying it in a Raspberry Pi, or you can use your Android phone. Sometimes, suppose for example, you are developing an emotion recognition program. Suppose whenever I unlock my using my face, only if I smile, it has to unlock. Suppose if I'm not happy or if I'm having a different emotion, it will not unlock. Or if it has to recognize from whenever I look at my phone, it has to identify my emotions, and then it has to suppose if I'm connected to a regular consultation, or if a patient is under consultation with a doctor for some medical treatment related to depression or something, whenever the person is looking at a phone, or you can smartwatch, it can trigger him to look at phone very often. Then in that case, whenever he looks at his phone, it can capture his image and then recognize the facial expressions, and then it can analyze his expression, and it is connected to the cloud, or somewhere maybe it is connected to his smart band. It can connect to the his consultant over cloud, or doctor somewhere else. It can pass on the information very frequently. All such things can be done using these things. So for such one example I gave, maybe one more example application I would like to discuss here. Maybe way in the slide, but then I just wanted to give an example. For example, a person is wearing a MI Smart watch, Smart Band 5, and then it can recognize or read the heart rate, and has the navigation, everything built in, and then also his physiological signals, say the galvanic, like skin temperature, sweat, everything. Okay, and then it is sensing all the input data. Fine. Suppose the person wants to reach one place. He is using a navigation system, and then he is moving across. Sometimes suddenly, and then he is not able to locate or reach the destination, and then he is not able to find the place where he wants to reach. And in that case, if he is already a patient or a normal person, whoever it is, his heart rate may increase, or his emotion may change. He may go panic or fear or anger or disgust, whatever it is, not a positive emotion. Okay, so in that case, his heart rate sensor or his physiological can actually extract the data, and from his navigation it can extract the data. All these together can work on his mobile phone or in his smart band, whatever it is. It can recognize where he is and what emotion he is. If it is given to, suppose if he is an Alzheimer patient, dementia patient, then it can go to his consultant or somebody who is always giving directions. Suppose if he is forgetting where he has to go, then it can provide the directions, things like that. So for such things, it will be helpful. Okay, maybe if you are willing to develop any project in earlier, these inputs may help you. Okay. So in the workflow, as I said, if it is for a desktop GPU and then CPU embedded, all these, of course, it has some challenges. And now coming to the framework, we need to discuss about the Keras TensorFlow. So flow tensor means just an array, and you need to just import. If you use PIP install Keras, PIP install TensorFlow, all these will get installed, and then your Keras works on top of the TensorFlow, or you can use either Keras or PyTorch, whatever you want. And then you can, and actually this can Keras can work on Theano or TensorFlow on whatever on top of it, or Caffe. I'll go to the next slide and then explain more. Here you have this ONNX, means the Open Neural Network Exchange format. This basically represents a deep learning framework. That means it is an interface or a library or a tool which allows to build a model. That means it's like plug and play. Everything is done by this. You just need to give your data set and get your output. On top of it, one by one, like a sandwich, you can develop multi-layers. Okay. So either you can have a Keras or a PyTorch or a Theano or a Caffe, things like that. It works one on top of it. I can actually go for a link and then explain this framework. I'll just stop the here for a second. And then, yeah, coming here, this deep learning framework, I will share all these links in the slides finally. So there are some deep learning frameworks which you can use. Here I found a very good link which explains. I have actually taken the same sentences in my slide. So you have TensorFlow as one framework which you can use, and then Keras. And in Keras, there are two categories. One is sequential or Keras functional API. So all the layers that you have constructed, the each block, convolutional layers, what you have constructed, everything will go one by one in a sequential manner. So if you use sequential keyword in your Keras, then it will take one by one. Okay. Whereas the Keras functional API is actually used for a multi-output model or complex model. And then you can use these several transfer learning models, already developed models. If you are using, you can install it, and then see the advantage of using Keras is you need not have to write the code for all these, taking all these. You have to just give a command net. In the bracket, if you give this model, it will just take this model. And all these models comes with the data set like CIFAR or OmniGlot or MNIST, whatever it is. You just give load data set, it loads everything, and everything happens just like that. Just one line of code. And then PyTorch. So you can work using images for this detection application for text, or you can use reinforcement learning. Caffe is also another popular deep learning framework. Deep learning 4J. So these are the 5 different deep learning frameworks. And then a comparison between all these frameworks are given, in which language they are developed. TensorFlow by Google. So all these are supported by CUDA. Yes. So in that case, if you are it has the CUDA library. So if you are trying to go for an NVDA or Jetson Nano or any card GPU cards, then it will get supported. You can directly go for an implementation in the cloud wherever you want. So this is the thing. And compared to TensorFlow, PyTorch is more intuitive, and then it explains the advantages of the PyTorch. It uses matplotlib also. You will get all the graphical plot. If you want to compare your analysis, draw confusion matrix, anything can be matplotlib. I think you guys already know, and you will be doing all this, but I just wanted to give a brief idea about this. And then here it explains about the Keras. What are the how you have to make this like a sandwich, how to prepare all this, the layers one by one, one by one, how you have to develop the model. All these are given here. I will share all these links. And regarding PyTorch, get started with the PyTorch. Okay. So these are things about the frameworks. Now I'll go back to the slides. And these are the challenges. So far we have seen the advantages and lot many things about the reason and the rationale behind using deep learning. We have seen very effective, very fast, etc., etc., etc. But then, what are the challenges? We have so many parameters to tune parameters, and then you need to have a data set which is labeled, because this follows the supervised. Actually, later you will be learning about unsupervised also, and reinforcement. There is a reinforcement, deep unsupervised. But if you are using a deep supervised, then you need to do all the labeling. And also you have to do augmentation, then once again labeling, and training takes hours or days. And you have to deploy on embedded tasks. So things like that. So you, of course, nothing comes at free of cost. There is no free lunch. So you have to compromise or trade off with all these challenges. Still, if you want to go ahead with these, you can go for it. And then creating custom architecture. Actually, this is from the MATLAB codes. Layers, removing, connecting, disconnect. From Python, it will be different. But similar, you will have similar commands. Okay. Advanced, we now will move on to the advanced applications of deep learning, image classification. Actually, see, the computer vision is actually an different, or after performing image processing, the next level, the input or what you give to image processing is just the image input. And from the image processing output, the next level, the application is computer vision. Okay. What happens next? Once if you classify this as a vehicle or an animal or an object or a person, what happens next? So that is actually the computer vision part, object detection, and then the segmentation of it. Suppose if it is an unmanned aerial vehicle, it is actually more whether it is our own vehicle or a foreign vehicle, or whether it is within the boundary or crossing the boundary, whether our vehicle is crossing the boundary or some other country vehicle is entering it here, then you have to monitor it and then earmark it, and then continuously you have to monitor. So for that you need the segmentation and then all this detection, etc. Okay. So these are high level. We'll be needing the YOLO, which comes later now. For the semantic segmentation. Semantics means the actual meanings. I think you know what is syntax and semantics. So the segmentation part, the pixel classification. So you a labeler app which labels this is man, this is vehicle, this is car, what it is. You are labeling it, and then you can track continuously the person or a vehicle that is moving. And then the object detection framework. In future, we will be discussing about the RN and LSTM part also. So apart from simple CNN, you will have RCN, faster RCNN, faster, all these different versions of it. So if the car is coming at what distance it is coming, if it is suppose if it is a self-driving car, it is reading the signboard stop, then it has to stop, and from what distance it is finding it is able to, then it is trying to slow down. Not just at that moment it can stop immediately, it has to slow down gracefully and then stop here. And this is an optical flow, which is a computer vision concept for motion estimation, in which direction it is moving to calculate that, all this. So the confidence interval, whether it will stop abruptly or gracefully, at what interval it will stop. This is the boundary line to stop, means where it is stopping. So the confidence, it shows 0.995. That means it will stop exactly at this line. or even ahead of this. So the confidence is 0.995. That means 99% it can stop. So these are applications of this object detection frameworks. And then next is YOLO. I think some guys are doing projects using YOLO. So here, as I said, object detection, you need to go for a strong bounding box and then perform the classification. I think you know what is YOLO. You look only once and then at real time for object recognition, you use this. This is just some part of code. And then how to build and test application. This is using MATLAB, using YOLO. If you use MATLAB, then all these commands comes in handy. You just have the deep learning toolbox in it, and all this YOLO happens automatically with it. It is embedding there, and it just integrated and it works. Integrated application deployment, it happens, and then traffic sign detection and recognition. So it goes like this, and this bootstrapping onwards, I will continue from the next class. Tomorrow we will have quiz. I have hardly another 10. So what we will do is tomorrow at maybe around 1:35, 1:40, you all join. We will be starting the quiz, and then all of you must join. We'll give the password. Quiz is over. Be ready with paper, pen, calculator, all accessories what you want, and then once when quiz is done, 20 minutes for the quiz, and then you can take 10 minutes for uploading. Maybe we can give 15 minutes also, not a problem. So you can upload it, and then make sure that you choose the correct answer. Okay, and that's it. So you will have part A and part B. So wherever you need justification, you have to write in your paper and then upload. And then after the quiz and uploading, everything is over. After probably 1 hour or 45 minutes, we can just meet once again in the same link. And then we'll continue and complete the rest of the slides. Okay. If you have any doubts, please tomorrow after these slides are over, we will discuss. Okay. So thank you.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
Ma'am, for tomorrow's quiz in deep learning part, do we have up to today's class?
I think in the last class itself, I have explained very clearly up to Monday, whatever we have discussed.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, last class only I said up to Monday's class. Actually, whatever we have discussed in the last week, Thursday only, we continued on Monday and extended. So there is not much overlapping between last week Thursday and to this Monday's classes. So today's class is not required for the quiz. Or if you were very attentive also, you can just make an attempt. Nothing to worry. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.